Okay, so today we're working on the piston, putting them back into our motor. You can see I have them separated and taken apart right now. I'm just showing you what it looks like pulling those rings off. What I'm doing, I'm going to go through and replace all the rings. This is my motor for the CB650. You can see there's two larger rings, and then with a stack of three, the oil spacer and the two thinner rings. So peel each one of those out. I'm showing this because this is the first time I've ever done it, and I was lucky enough to have a friend show me how to pull them off on the first one. So what I'm doing here is you pull those all off. This thing is from 1979, and working on my Cafe Racer build, I wanted to have a solid compression, and so I decided to replace all the rings. Even though as I got these off, I realized they might have been okay. But anyway, so we started pulling each of those pieces off. There's 5 total pieces in there. And I picked up a new set of rings. In fact, I've got all my hardware from this awesome site, CMS Motorcycle Parts. I think it's cmsnl.com. But cool stuff. I've had a lot of access. You can see I've got all the new rings here, and I'll put them on there. And the trick to this, they're very tight. And so the key here is just to slide them on so each one has an opening. You can see I started with this, the oil spacer, sliding it in, kind of finding its place. This one was actually pretty easy. And then there's a thinner piece that goes on either side of that oil spacer. And the thinner ones weren't bad either. They fall right into their place. The key though, again, not opening too far, because if these are working properly, those rings are meant to be stiff, and so they'll break. That's basically, when I talked to the guy at the shop, he said, you can test your rings by opening them up, and if they break right away, they're probably good. So kind of a failure test that says you have to break it before you know it's good. So anyway, these are new, putting them on, and I did each one. So I did the bottom ones. That's pretty easy, and I did want to show you what the stiffness is like on the top pieces. Again, this is this is my first rebuild, so I'm looking at it for the first time, and so I just started on one end and really just worked my way around that edge, keeping it tucked into the channel, and wasn't too hard. Took a little bit of practice. By the fourth, I was pretty good at it, or at least felt a lot better about it. So anyway, sliding through there, you can see I got that one in there, and it made for a nice fit when I did get it back into the cylinder and connecting everything. But yeah, putting those together was, some of them were a little tighter than others. Felt like it. But one thing I wanted to point out that I think is helpful, and I'm glad I did this when I took the engine apart. But as I took it apart, you can see the tape around each piston head. Though that tape is labeling the location of the piston head. The reason for that is because they wear differently as they were used in the old motor. They wear differently compared to the cylinder, and so I wanted to make sure I got them back into the right cylinder so that they were matched up a little bit better. And I did that when I took it off, and I'm glad that I did, because in a later video you'll see I put it back together, but it made it really easy to identify what location. In fact, at the end of this one, I'll put these piston heads back on onto the crankshaft, so they're matching up better. But anyway, here we are taking these apart and putting them together, and it's actually a decent flow. You saw that one break right off the bat, which kind of tells me those rings were probably in okay shape, but no problem. Didn't feel a need to do anything different there. So yeah, taking those apart, putting them back together. I wanted to just show these, and you can see I did it in real time to see what it would look like. One thing I'm going to point out while I'm doing this part is you can see those spaces. I had to review my manual to see exactly how to set them up in there, and you want to have the spaces offset, and the manual kind of draws out exactly how that should look. And the offsetting, I think that just helps keep a tighter fit. And so I don't show it in the video as I put the cylinder heads, as I connect the cylinder heads back to the motor, but I did go through and make sure those were matching up based on what the manual says to do. Now I'm going to move right ahead, and I did do the quick time lapse here, but you can see I'm putting those on. My daughter was awesome. She reminded me that I had to put that towel over top of it to not lose the pins. So glad I did that. I'm sliding the pins through, putting the clips on, and as you do that, they fall out a number of times. I'm a rookie figuring it out. One of these, you know, my daughter, she wanted to try one and she did, and it flung across the room. Luckily we found it, but in the end got them together and it's looking good. I am really stoked. This is coming together. Pretty fun to work on, and we're having a good time getting it together. So here's the piston heads.